kindred friends, and welcome to the Radical Emergence podcast, where we're having conversations at the edge of transformation. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Jen Pierre-Rich, and with me is my friend, co-host, and co-collaborator, Dr. Sally Adnams Jones. Please check out our bios in the show notes, where you'll find links to our work, websites, and can find ways to connect with us. If you're not already following, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and join our mailing list so you can stay up to date on new episodes as they drop.
Hello, everybody. Sally here. This exciting project consists of about 26 episodes in all, dedicated to better defining and understanding transformation on all its levels of reality. That's personal, social, as well as ecological. We're going to ask, what is transformation? Why bother? Why do we need it? And what does it feel like or look like? We'll also ask, can we induce it or perhaps accidentally block it? These are really important questions for growth.
We draw not only on our hard-won life experience, we are also transdisciplinarians. So what the heck is that? Well, it means we want to understand transformation from as many lenses as possible, including formal academic disciplines and discourses, art, media, and popular culture. Importantly, we draw from our living experience.
So we are experts, so to speak, but mostly in just one small but highly critical area, our own suffering, and the medicines that we've both used to transform our own lives. So to this end, we've also added decades of committed practices, as well as formal degrees, including specific in-depth studies in the mechanisms of transformation, because we needed to understand this healing journey for ourselves.
Does this entitle us to help others? You bet. Absolutely. Because it is by sharing our stories, knowledge, and direct experience that we offer sane, sober, practical tools for living on the ground of life. So welcome. Strap in, hang on, and enjoy the ride as we deep dive into a universe of transformation. It is so good to be back with you here on the Radical Emergence podcast. In our capacity as the mavens of transformation, Sally and I are grateful to be ambassadors of transformation. We are students of transformation, and we are also in service to transformation. And as transformative beings, we're always exploring our growth patterns, our developmental trajectories. And one of those patterns and trajectories is the journey of growth and healing that happens over time. The journey of growth over time encompasses all the levels of reality that we talk about on this show, the personal level, the social level, the ecological level, and the universal level. And we have talked extensively about the nature of our healing journey on this podcast. It is a journey of spirals, of seasons, of cycles, breakdowns, and breakthroughs. We've explored the journey through a variety of lenses, through developmental lenses, trauma-informed lenses, and we've looked at how that unresolved trauma can continue to impact us as adults. So throughout these 20 episodes, we've explored what gets in the way of transformation, and we've also hopefully given you some great tools on the ground of life that you can use to move more gracefully and intentionally, more consciously with the forces of transformation. As we say all the time, we are fields of transformation participating within fields of transformation. And our goal here is learning to move with these tides of transformation more gracefully and consciously, wherever we are on that developmental journey. There have been endless writings and theories and maps about the journey of transformation. Many of us know what I mean when I say we go on a journey. Some of us have had a version of what is known as the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. Some kind of a breakdown forces us to leave the known and go into the unknown. And it's there in the unknown that we claim some kind of birthright gift of healing and wisdom. And ultimately, we return back into our families and our communities and into the world to share our gifts of wisdom. And we are so lucky today because Sally is going to deep dive into that hero's journey and into that heroine's journey and talk about this in depth today in this episode. And so on the hero's journey, we have the work of Joseph Campbell, and then in the similar vein, we have the work of women scholars such as Maureen Murdock, who's a Jungian psychologist and student of Campbell, who reimagined the journey for women from a woman's point of view, very unapologetically, centering not only our unique gifts and contributions, but also the cold, hard truths and often harshness that we endure because of patriarchal dominance and control. And Sally is going to lead us into that conversation today. I'm so grateful for that. So in this episode, we are turning our eyes towards the long view. And in that long view, we have elderhood, the long-term journeys we take in life, especially as we come into our elder years. And so the goal of being a conscious elder is learning to make decisions that benefit not only ourselves and our families, but benefit the world and our planet and our animal kinfolk. We show up to care in the world, to shape our lives and live a value-driven life. And we are creating meaning in our life, even in the face of tremendous transformation and change. And it's remarkable how much our lives change as we grow and progress on the long-term journey. Most of the time, we start to realize how interconnected we are with each other, how much we need each other. As we age, we really need each other even more. And so rather than operating from that illusion of separation from each other in our earth home as conscious elders who've been through the journey, we start participating with the world from that hard-earned relational intelligence. We start thinking about how our desires are changing, and we start thinking about things like the inevitability of death. We start focusing on not just living consciously, but dying consciously. How can we experience a good life and a good death? As we get older, we start making meaning differently. We find meaning in different things. You know, the things that I liked when I was 25 are not the things that I like now that I'm 50. And our beliefs change too. My beliefs at 25 are not the same beliefs that I have now at 50, right? So hopefully, as we learn and grow on this long-term journey, and however it looks in our lives individually, we start making better choices decade after decade. And our lives become a testimony to those better decisions. And our development happens because we're learning and maturing. And we're starting to be able to shape our own destiny in new ways in our sense of meaning. And we start to know what we actually believe rather than what we've just been told to believe. And if we're lucky, we get to live into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. A few of us push into the 90s and 100s. Every decade of life is bringing us new challenges. And so our challenges in later in life are not better or worse than they are in younger life. They're just different. One thing that happens to us when we get older is that research shows that loneliness is commonplace in every age group. And it's only getting worse. And it's especially true for those of us who are over 50, because our social circles start to shrink as we get older. And that leaves us without the friends and community support we need. And so we're more likely to become lonelier. And the research I read said 1 in 4 adults over 60 experiences loneliness. And the aging journey also gets us thinking about our legacy. How do we want to be remembered? Have we lived a good life? What have we done for the world? These are the questions that come up naturally on the journey. For some of us, those inquiries become tinged with shame or blame or regret about what we have done or what we haven't done. And without actively addressing that, in our own sphere of healing and self-awareness, that energy of shame and regret can become very toxic as we mature and grow into eldership. So how do we channel our hearts, our minds, our love, and our work into service for humanity at every stage of life, but especially later in life? Is the answer to the loneliness that we face among elders, is the answer to that sharing our gifts? Is the answer to our loneliness reaching out? If our disconnect from trauma is disconnection, then the answer is reconnection and connecting with each other. And elders bring forth hard-earned direct experience and knowledge. And that is an incredibly valuable wisdom that has a positive impact on our communities. And Indigenous people have always known this. Elders have always been held in positions of reverence and respect. So the journey of growth and aging and transformation can be looked at through many different lenses. But in this show, the lens we want to look at is the long-term journey, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, and how that shows up for us in our lives. I'm going to leave it there and pass it over to Sally, who's going to take us deeply into the hero and heroine's journey now.
Hi, everybody, and it's great to be back, especially with my dear, dear colleague and lovely friend. We're getting to know each other more and more as we go through this podcast together, and I'm just so grateful to have Jen in my life because we've shared such an arc in our own lives, and the more people we speak to, we realize everybody has an arc, and when we come together to look at the patterns, we can really learn from each other. So this is a wonderful opportunity to notice that most people's lives have an arc, and we're going to look at that arc and look at it as a pattern. We learn about maturation, the journey of becoming mature over time through, as Jen said, many stories as well as academic studies. And if we look at our first original stories, like our sacred Bible stories or stories from the Quran or our ancient cultural stories, we'll notice that it was usually only the man who could become a hero. So let's just take a look at that. Historically, the hero's journey was masculine. And this is important because women's journeys now have to include that masculine too. So let's just take a look at that as we update. What does it mean, to be a hero? What is that? And what does it mean to go on a journey? Those are two questions we can look at today. And if we look at ancient heroes, for example, pre-modern historical heroes like Attila the Hun, or Genghis Khan, or Alexander the Great, these were men of enormous power who were basically brutes, who took their armies, rampaging, killing, raping, and yet in pre-modern times, that was considered the hero because their needs were survival. But that sort of brute strength, the upper body strength of a man with a full army who could lead killing rampages to get resources, that was considered important. So that was the hero who risked everything, was able to kill the other and bring back resources. Now, we don't consider that so much the hero anymore, although we see that behavior presently in some of our political leaders who advocate for war as an option to solve problems. So that idea of a hero raises its head even today when we are feeling insecure. The strong man leader is in that kind of hero mold. But we have other heroes. We have cultural heroes in our movies, for example, like Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, all the male figures, but they were slightly different. They had enormous skills, they were selfless, and they came to rescue the feminine and their nation or whoever was vulnerable. And this is a beautiful idea of masculinity and rising to be the hero. They rescued, pretty much. That was their goal. They didn't go rampaging and killing. They were more defenders against evil. So we have an update. The hero and his journey is becoming more modern. And this still is very much alive in modern ideas of what masculinity and a hero should look like. Finally, we got Wonder Woman. So finally we have, or Catwoman, a woman who had that masculine agency where she could actually empower herself and rescue the vulnerable. She could be selfless, she could risk her life, she could be brave and courageous and really make a positive impact. This is brand new. This is delightful because, you know, we can look at Victorian novels and mostly the heroine is stuck at home. She has this corset on which she can't hardly breathe or move. She is the one that needs rescuing from boredom and is usually fainting and taking smelling salts because her day is overwhelming with very little. That was how women were written about. They were brave if they left the home and went to meet a lover, usually a gothic love story. So we need to notice how the hero's changing. And this is really important. And we're going to develop this over the show, how important it is to update the story of what a hero is. You know, we have to also move beyond the idea of the fireman or the first responder or the ER doctor who is constantly at work and saving people and deeply traumatized. Those are real heroes who also sacrifice everything for the benefit of the good, but are deeply traumatized, and we need to support these people and reinvent the idea of what a hero does. And we will unfold that as we move along. So just to say, we've defined what the hero used to be, and it does include the masculine. And now we're saying that women have to include the masculine if they want to also be able to be agentic, empowered, and rescue not only the vulnerable, but also the planet. We're going to update this story. But before I hand it back to Jen, I just want to say that the journey is a pattern as well. And we're going to, even though Joseph Campbell had 17 stages to this arc, we're just going to cut it down to like 3 stages here, because you can go and Google Joseph Campbell. He did great work on the stages of the journey. But just for clarity, we can say what that looks like over a lifetime, and this is for men and women now, is you're at home in the village and you're in the process of innocence and sort of a primordial oneness, and something calls you, and it's usually a challenge. So the second part of the journey of self-discovery is to leave the village or the known or the comfortable, whatever it is. You're called beyond that cozy, comfortable nest into the unknown. And there you face all sorts of challenges, and you're initiated into stepping into your bravest, most courageous self, into the unknown, fighting the demons, whatever that looks like, and deep transformative learning for men and women. And the third part of the story, and Jen has referred to that as eldership, we return to the village and we serve with the gifts and the knowledge that we have hard earned. So we're going to simplify the 17 stages of Campbell's process, and over the show, just look at those 3 stages. What we would call the kind of primordial oneness. You haven't differentiated, you have no agency, you haven't empowered yourself. You step into that, part 2, you become an individual, you separate out, you differentiate. That is the masculine for all of us. And the final part of the journey is to bring yin and yang together. Bring your gifts back to the community, come back into relationship. You've got the hard-earned, differentiated individual now coming back into relationship and service. So that is the yin and the yang together. And sadly, we don't really appreciate that final part. So I'm going to hand that over back to Jen, who's going to explore why sometimes we get stuck along the journey and don't complete the full arc of what we call the mono myth, that arc of the journey. So I look forward to hearing more about eldership and that complete arc from you, Jen. Handing it back.
Wow, this is such an important show, because redefining what we mean when we say hero is about not objectifying that hero's image outside of ourselves and reclaiming our capacity to be the everyday hero of our own lives. And, I know on my own journey, when I had that breakdown that I've talked about, it was a heroic act to return into myself, into that space within me in my inner world, and retrieve those wounded parts of me that wanted to come into the light. That is truly the hero's journey of going into the unknown and finding the bitter medicine and taking it and coming back transformed. And so many of us have experienced that and are showing up as the heroes of our own lives. So that, Sally, this is so important, because the hero is no longer the Batman. The hero is the Sally and the Jen doing the hard inner work inside of ourselves. We are heroic, and everybody doing the work. We are everyday heroes. It's beautiful. Yeah, so over these 20 episodes, we've covered a lot of phases of development. And as we've talked about, one phase of this development is becoming the authors of our own lives. So what does that even mean? What does it mean to become the hero of our own life story? And move away from the known, from our family and religious and social and educational conditioning, what we know, into the unknown, towards shaping our own lives on our own terms, based on our active participation within our own selves and with each other. So conscious living is all about being in a relationship with myself, so I can be aware of how various dimensions of my inner life are affecting me, are impacting my outer life. And my outer life is also determining various dimensions of my inner life, right? So there's this fractal thing that's happening, because I'm in active participation with my inner world, and my inner world is in relationship with my outer world is in relationship with my inner world. And there's a dance there that's happening, right? And so part of becoming the hero in our own lives is recognizing this fractal relationship between our inner and outer world. In Robert Keegan's book called The Evolving Self, Problem and Process in Human Development, he writes, and this is a quote, he says, If you want to understand another person in some fundamental way, you must know where the person is in his or her evolution, in the way the person is settling the issue of what is self and what is other. Essentially defines the underlying logic of the person's meanings. All right, so how are we settling the issue of self? What is self? Who are we? Who am I? How am I settling the issue of other? Who is other? Who are you? Right? So understanding, Keegan is telling us that understanding how we settle those issues of what is self and what is other, that helps us understand someone's values and the choices that they make in their life. And as a result of Keegan's work, Marcella Baxter-Magola developed a theory of self-authorship. And self-authorship is basically explaining how we develop over time to become the authors of our own lives. So self-authoring means living authentically, living on our own terms. Right now, I'm sure you've heard authenticity is all the rage. There's a ton of books about how to live be your authentic self. And it just basically means being true to yourself, being true to who you are, but you can't figure out what's true to you without going on that inner journey, right? And so we have to, identify the illusions on the journey that exist within us. That's part of the journey, and healing those illusions. And we did an entire show about healing the subject-object split in episode 6 of the podcast. So if you want to fill in that information, if you didn't see the show, I definitely recommend you check it out. So in self-authoring, we're building a foundation of support within ourselves. We're doing that work within ourselves. We're being intentional about building that foundation of support within our inner world. And the goal of being a self-authoring person is to become that field of safety within ourselves that was stripped away for many of us during traumatic experiences when we were children. So, a lot of us are learning to become that field of safety within ourselves for the first time in our lives. And so this work of self-authoring, of taking responsibility for our behavior, our thinking, our healing, we become conscious self-authoring people at any stage of our development, whether we're young people or we're elders. And we're moving in the direction of healing and integration. And I know that I keep harping upon it, but I'll keep saying it, that all roads lead to self-awareness, having that relationship within ourselves, with ourselves, being intimate within ourselves. That is what gives it the capacity to participate with our world from that same place of intimacy. And to me, that's what a hero does. A hero shows up in the world to care for the world from that place of intimacy. And that's what we're doing as elders. We're showing up from that place of relational intelligence. And that, my friends, that there's a lot of radical healing that happens when we do that, because that intimacy within ourselves becomes intimacy in the world and with all beings, because we recognize our deep interconnections with all beings. And that is the driving force as self-authoring beings behind our decisions and our desires and the callings we find in life. All right, Sally, back to you. Let's go deeper.
Yeah, Jen, I love the way you have brought in Keegan and his final stage, self-authoring as an elder, to look back over your life and see that you had agency is super important, because you're accountable. Nobody else is accountable for your life. And I love the way we've called it the monomyth, that this arc shows up in everybody's life. So we notice the pattern, but it's anybody who's done a creative writing course, talking about self-authoring or authoring your life, or a good plot is always that movement into challenge and facing that challenge and doing the learning involved to overcome and then have a satisfying resolution or denouement. Anybody who's tried to write a book or a novel will understand the agent is going to say, you don't have the arc. And this is more than just how to write books. This is how to write your own life, how to notice the arc and to live into it fully. So how do we update the old hero's journey, which, might I add, was understood as a physical journey? So the old hero had lots of upper body strength, he had weapons, and he would go off into the wilderness, and the unknown was to face tigers and dragons. Now we complexify that and say the hero's journey is a psychological journey. You still go off into the unknown. You still take what you have and face the demons, but they could be internal. This doesn't, as Jen said, have to be an external journey. This is how we're updating the idea of the hero and heroine's journey. So it's the same monomyth, only it's no longer somewhere out there, although it could be. If you're fighting environmental, toxins, it might be external, but it now includes the internal, doing the work. The hero now involves feeling the whole body, allowing themselves to be vulnerable, going deep into the psyche and the subject-object split, and including both. It takes enormous courage, especially for men now, to turn the gaze from the external dragon to the internal dragon. Huge courage. So this is, Jen and I have been saying over 21 episodes now, that this is what consciousness is calling for. This hero's journey involves learning how to be fully sentient, opening up to vulnerability, understanding interconnectivity, that we are interdependent, not independent. That was a modern, patriarchal, old hero, went off on his own. Now we have consciousness waking up through every gender, every race, and we all need to go on this collective journey into the expansion of consciousness. So briefly, as an academic and as a transformative educator, I want to mention Jack Mezirow. He's really well known as a transformative educator. He noted this loop of transformation and he brought it to 10 stages. And I really want to itemize these because this is no longer one trajectory over a lifetime. This can happen in a day. This can happen with my little granddaughter who goes off to play school. And in her 3 hours at play school, she goes through this journey. My two sons, as they grew up and turned 18 and went off to college, they went through this journey every year as they went off into the unknown and only came back at summer or Christmas. They would leave the village or the home, just as my little granddaughter does, for 3 hours, go off into the unknown, face enormous challenges, learn a whole bunch of stuff, and have to come back home and reintegrate. So this process is, as we've always said, fractal. It can happen in 1 hour, it can happen in 1 year, it can happen over a lifetime. So this arc, the monomyth that we said was a lifetime, can happen in this little 10-stage journey of transformation. And Jack Mezirow said this is what happens every time you transform. Number one, you go through a disorientating dilemma, which is kind of a conflict that needs resolution. It could be, I'm going to get divorced, I'm going to lose my job, I have a health crisis, whatever it is. So that's number one. Number two, you have to do some self-examination and you test your current beliefs against what the challenge is. Number three, you do some critical assessment. You review the assumptions and your perspectives. You look at your cognitive bias. Number 4, you start to realize you're not alone, that these are shared experiences and people have common struggles. So you start looking for wisdom. Number 5, you explore the options. Other people have been there. What have they done? What can I do? And you start imagining new choices. Number 6, you plan a course of action and you start looking at strategies and what do you need to learn to move forward. Number 7, you go learn that stuff. You actually do an acquisition of knowledge to implement your new plan and acquire skills. Number 8, you try out new roles, practicing new skills. Number 9, you build confidence by practicing that, gaining new experiences and self-awareness, as we've been saying all along. Do the 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell said. And the final number 10 of that learning curve is reintegration with your new skills and your perspectives, and you have expanded. Your consciousness has grown. So every time we transform, we go through these 10 stages, and that could be 3 times in one day, or it could take a whole lifetime. So we're doing these little fractal loops without even knowing it all the time. My little 18-month granddaughter, my 18-year-old son, minute to minute, as well as this long arc. And hopefully by the time we become an elder, we have reached a stage of integration. That's where you can start giving back. So we've done the journey from innocence to experience, as William Blake wrote his whole book, beautiful book on innocence to experience, but he didn't include service. And that's what we understand now, is that we have 3 stages, not 2. So, I watch my little 18-month-old granddaughter slowly losing innocence and gaining experience, and it's beautiful. I watched my sons grow up and lose innocence and gain experience. There's a tragedy there that you can't be both. You can't be full of experience and still be innocent. So there's a loss as you move along, and that is the journey into the unknown. And it's painful. And so we're understanding that the new hero is somebody who can acknowledge the pain and the pleasure, who can grow from both, who can hold the pair of ducks, as we call them, the paradox, and integrate them. And as you step into eldership, you start facilitating that for others or giving back your gifts. So I'd love to hear more, Jen, because I know you feel really strongly about eldership and how important that is becoming in this age where we glorify youth and we get infantilized and we get stuck there, especially women. Women are completely silenced as they grow older because they're only valued for their beauty and not their masculine gifts, their agency and their power. Back to you, Jen.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. Women really suffer in that loneliness, and men do too. We're all suffering as we get older with a variety of issues, and that's why being able to identify these developmental arcs, like we're pointing out in this show, is so important, because it's much easier to navigate those arcs if we know how to identify the patterns and what to expect. And so that's why what we're talking about on today's show is really just so important for everybody. Even as a 50-year-old, I'm just starting to understand even what it means to be a crone. And you might be familiar with that term, crone. There's a journey from maiden to mother and then to crone. And it's part of the developmental journey for many cisgendered and trans women, but not all would identify with that journey from maiden to mother to crone. And of course, our journeys are not going to look like everybody else's. They're going to be unique and individual, as each of us are. No journey or stage of development is going to look the same. So we are using really broad developmental and sociological strokes here when we're talking about all of these things. But for most of us, regardless of our gender, there's a journey through some distinct stages. And as Sally is pointing to, these arcs of transformation in our lives that are marked by growth and states and stages, and the accumulation of wisdom and knowledge that becomes more, hopefully, more and more shared as we grow and age, because our elder years are full of wisdom. And as Sally is mentioning, you know, that wisdom is often overlooked or underappreciated. And so it's time to really bring forward, I feel strongly, the ripe fruits of our experience, our context, and the deeper understandings that we have cultivated throughout many years of experience. And so the elders' gifts are that we bring community and generational healing and continuity. We bring reflection and resilience and growth, and sometimes crazy wisdom and a wealth of accumulated knowledge. And so those gifts, as we know, they don't arrive easily. You know, they don't just plop into our lap. There's a journey that we have to take in order to receive those gifts. And so we don't find those gifts without a fight. There's a whole lot of dying and rebirthing, clearing away of illusion, and then those gifts come forward. And that's one of the reasons why Sally and I feel so proud of what we're doing on this podcast, because we are identifying these arcs of the everyday hero's journey. We're identifying these benchmarks of on the journey of transformation, which makes it much easier for us to engage with them, because it's awful when we have a breakdown. Nobody wants to have a breakdown, but the good news is that we know, as people who've been through breakdowns in our lives, that they usually lead to a breakthrough. And so when we recognize that pattern of breakdowns and breakthroughs as part of the transformative journey, as a normal and healthy part of the transformative journey, then we're not likely to get as lost or distraught when we're experiencing that breakdown, because we're trusting that part of the journey. And so we're not going to get as easily overwhelmed, because we are learning that there's a rhythm to growth and healing, and transformation likewise has a rhythm. And one of the things that Sally and I are trying to do on this podcast is tap into that rhythm of transformation and share that. Ken Wilber called us to, we've said it before on the show, wake up, grow up, and show up. Because when we fully wake up, grow up, and show up, we end up with lots of lived experience to draw from. And that experience is incredibly powerful medicine for our world right now. It creates a kind of confidence in elders that I'm sure you've experienced. It's very palpable in some people. Some people have just lived enough life that you just can't shake them. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm sure you've been around people like that. So it's easier to navigate these ups and downs and these arcs of the hero's journey when you've been through a lot of experience. It's easier to trust that the breakthroughs are going to come when we've been through breakdowns many times. It's easier to trust when we're in the dark night that a new dawn is going to come. So experience really does pay off in terms of awareness that we can and do overcome obstacles all the time, that we are incredibly skilled. If we take back and step back and look at our lives, that we're incredibly skilled at overcoming obstacles. And then in a lot of ways, we're made to overcome obstacles, and we can do that gracefully. And that's the wonderful gift that elders bring to younger generations, which is the proof of resilience over time. And our cumulative wisdom of resilience is medicine. It truly is medicine. And we need that wisdom of the elders, that medicine, to be shared. And that's what being a hero in our own lives is all about. It's what being a self-authoring person or a conscious person or a conscious elder is all about. Doing this healing work that we need to do within ourselves so that we can meet life on our own terms and we can bring our healing gifts into the world and effectively use the tools that we need in order to cope in these very difficult transformative times. I keep in my mind coming back to Keegan's idea of how we're sorting out the idea of self and how we're sorting out the idea of other. And that's going to help us figure out how we're making meaning in the world. Is the meaning that we're making all about ourselves? Or does the meaning that we're creating include others, including our earth home and our animal kinfolk? That's an important inquiry. And if we're experiencing a crisis of loneliness, I believe that the cure for that loneliness is connection. And we can be intentional about creating communities of care in which all people, and especially our elders, are lifted up and given the opportunity to share their gifts in meaningful ways. And as we start to align with what our values are, then as elders, we have a responsibility to communicate those values in the world. And there are so many ways to do that. The internet makes it much easier for elders to use their voices more effectively, to touch people, to touch the world, to share our gifts. That's what Sally and I are doing with this podcast. And we hope we have inspired you wherever you are on the life journey, as a young person, middle-aged person, or an elder, to use your voice. No matter where you are, this is your call to action, because we need your unique wisdom. If you're experiencing loneliness, please be intentional about finding and creating a community of supportive people. Feel free to reach out to us in the show, and we can point you in the direction of books or community resources in your area if you should need them. If you're experiencing that loneliness, I hope our presence here on the podcast will make your lives feel a little bit less lonely, because we are with you on this journey of transformation. We thank you for the gift of your time and for your healing and the wisdom you're bringing to us. I'm going to pass it back to Sally, and she's going to close us out with the show. And I look forward to being with you again next time on the Radical Emergence podcast.
Yeah, Jen, it's such a wonderful way to acknowledge our elders, that they have been through this cycle so many times. And, earlier we've spoken on multiple intelligences. Check out that episode, because we looked at IQ, EQ, which is intelligence, that is to do with emotions and connectivity, SQ, which is social intelligence, and we spoke about AQ. We haven't developed that much, but that is the intelligence of resilience, facing adversity. And that does take a bit of the trust. Oh, I've been through this before. I know I can get through it. So that AQ is definitely developed over time. But if you just look at the hero's journey, how it's changed. Initially, in pre-modern times, it was just physical brute strength. That made you a hero. That's all it took. Then in modern times, it became about IQ. I think, therefore I am. So we realized, okay, so the hero isn't just upper body strength, he's also intelligent, and he can problem solve. That is beautiful. I'm not decrying that, but the hero's journey keeps expanding. Now we include EQ and SQ. So I would suggest, if people want to know more about emotional intelligence and social intelligence, go and look at Daniel Goleman's work. He's fantastic. He wrote books on this. So the hero has to now include connectivity and social awareness and embodied awareness. He can't just be physically strong and have a high IQ. We've come to a crisis of modernity has taken us to the edge of the cliff because we thought that those were the only two important things. So now we have to include the yin, move away from the hyper yang, which is taking us to a crisis, and start feeling again and being aware of sentience and that everybody has a right to be here, and how do we support. So the hero's journey is now about going inward, EQ and SQ connecting, as well as including obviously physical health and IQ. So all the intelligences matter. We're not down on masculinity or their gifts. We're down on patriarchy, which has taken us to a cliff. That is a completely different thing. That is a philosophy that has devalued the other intelligences. We love men. We love their gifts. We ourselves, women, have been on a journey of learning how to be in our feminine and masculine, and we're flourishing here in the West because of that. And now men have this similar journey to start complexifying and include the other intelligences. We're calling them to do that because that's how we're going to serve our environment and our planet. So let's just briefly recap. I'm going to give you a citation from Joseph Campbell, who wrote extensively about the 1,000 faces of the hero. And this is what he said the journey looks like. So let's go back to the beginning. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons upon his fellow man. So you can hear the masculinity in that journey. Nothing wrong with that. We're just saying that that is not enough. That is not enough anymore. So if we take a breath and we begin to be more inclusive of everybody's gifts, of everybody's identity, of their interior as well as the exterior and the environment. Because really in the West, that classic monomyth was about men rescuing women. Western women don't need saving anymore. So who does need saving? Well, if we look at that question, there are still women who need saving. Certainly in Middle Eastern countries where they're still denied education, still denied the ability to read, drive. So we're not decrying that. The work is not yet done. Women still need rescuing. However, in the West, women do no longer probably need a lot of rescuing, although individual situations differ. So what does need rescuing? And can women contribute to the rescuing? Yes, they can. And we now need to rescue our environment. And it's not about only saving the polar bear. And men and women are now doing this equally with their scientific research, with understanding climate change. We're actually rescuing ourselves. Because there is no difference. If our environment goes down the tubes, and if climate change gets too dramatic, we will all need to be rescued. So who will the heroes be on this journey? And we cannot only rely on men to be the heroes anymore. So we all need to step up. We all need to find our masculinity, our agency, our physical skills, our mental skills. We all need to find our femininity, our community awareness, our self-awareness, and integrate those. So this is the final stage in this arc that we've looked at of integration. We don't know where it's going to go from here, but we're just looking at what we know now is integration of opposites is what's needed. And if we can pull this off, we've got what it takes to rescue ourselves, which is really coming to understand the unity of it all, which is, as Jen and I said in the beginning, that was the village we left. We're going to come back to this village after a process of separation during modernity. Late stage capitalism has split us all apart. So we come back in a way to that original Garden of Eden that, we were expelled from, the original unity, but from a much deeper level of consciousness. And I would like to quote that beautiful poet, T.S. Eliot, when he says, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place as if for the first time." So we, with our IQ, can build cities, and with our violence, we can destroy them. We can build gardens of Eden, and we can be expelled from them. We can create heaven and hell on earth. So the next part of the hero's journey is to realize we need to rescue ourselves, to man up, to woman up, and bring all our gifts and skills and intelligence alive and awake. And that's why Jen and I are here, and we're loving sharing this story, this plot arc with you, not only of individuals, but of the collective. As a collective, we're going through an arc of self-discovery. And as we've discussed in episode 2 or 3, we need to come back and discover this place as if for the first time. So thank you so much for being with us on this journey. Episode 21, we've only got 5 more left. Can you believe that? We can't. And Jen and I really look forward to trying to wrap up the enormous amount of information that we've shared with you over the next couple of episodes, and hopefully bring this to an integration for you as an audience as well. So until next time, we love and leave you. So thanks for joining us. And we hope you can take away some helpful tools, perhaps some great stories, and some wisdom for your own ongoing journey.
Join us for our next episode, where we will deep dive again into a universe of transformation.